Well, grade 12s, I want you to have a look at this cubic equation. Have a look at this one. X cubed minus x squared minus 8x plus 12 equals 0. You've got to solve for x here. So let's go and have a look at the grouping technique. Well, no problem. If we take out an x squared, let's see what happens. X minus 1. Here we can take out a negative 4, and we're left with 2x minus 3. What a pleasure. And it works, definitely. However, what do you notice? There's no common bracket. So what we could do is maybe decide to regroup these as you did in grade 10. Maybe let's put the negative 8x next. Let's swap these two around, the middle terms around, and see what happens. Well, okay, great. We can take out an x there. So we've got x squared minus 8. Nothing can come out except x squared minus 12. The negative comes out. But notice the brackets do not correspond. In other words, the grade 10 technique of grouping in pairs does not work. So what do we do here? Okay, now it's not difficult. I'm going to use all the stuff that we did in the previous lesson to develop a strategy. Now have a look at this. If we take the cubic equation, let's write it down again. X cubed minus x squared minus 8x plus 12. What do we know about the solutions? The solutions are factors of 12. Now, what are the factors of 12? Well, the numbers that go into 12 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12 itself. But not only the positive numbers, also the negative ones. So we can have plus 1 or minus 1, 2 or negative 2 could be a potential solution. So, but all of the factors, or not all of the factors, should I say, all of the solutions are factors of 12. So we've got to test to see which one of these is a potential solution. So let's start at the beginning. Let's start at 1 and see if 1 is a solution to the equation. So let's check out x equals 1. Let's see if 1 is a solution. Well, what do? We plug it into the equation. Okay, 1x cubed. Okay, so it's 1 cubed minus 1 squared minus 8 times 1 plus 12. Let's hope that it comes to the right side, which is 0. Well, let's check. This is going to give me 1 cubed is 1, minus 1 squared is 1, minus 8 plus 12. And guess what? That is equal to 4. 12 minus 8 is 4. Those goes, but which is not the right side. So this is not a solution. It cannot be a solution because it doesn't satisfy the equation. When you plug 1 in, it doesn't give you 0 on the right. So let's try negative 1. Let's check x equals negative 1. Let's see if this is a solution. Well, let's plug it in. Negative 1 cubed minus negative 1 squared minus 8 times negative 1 plus 12. What's that? Negative 1 cubed, negative 1. Careful now, that's minus 1 squared is 1, and then multiplied by the negative is negative 1. This is easy here. That's 8 plus 12. Okay, does this come to 0? Does this give us the right side? I don't think so, because that's 20 minus 1, which is 18, which is most definitely not 0. So again, that's not a solution. Alright, so should we go on to try 2? Let's see if the next one, let's just go up and see what the other answers are. So these didn't, so we've sorted out those. Let's try the 2 and the minus 2. Let's see if that gives us a solution. X equals 2. So let's try x equals 2. Let's plug it in. 2 cubed minus 2 squared minus 8 times 2 plus 12. So what does that give us? 8 minus 4 minus 16 plus 12. And guess what? This is going to give you 8 minus 4 is 4 minus 16 is negative 12 plus 12 is 0. What a pleasure. This is a solution here. I'm in love with the solution. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah, let's put a little pink thing. There's my solution. X equals 2 is a very nice little solution there. So what do we know? Okay, if it's a solution, then what can we do? Well, we can say, well, okay, if x equals 2 is a solution, then x minus 2 equals 0 gives us, what do we call this? The linear factor. Okay, the linear factor. which is great. Now remember, you've got a linear factor, but also what you have is a quadratic factor, if you remember from there. So in other words, if you take your cubic equation, x cubed minus x squared minus 8x plus 12 is equal to 0, one of the factors is x minus 2. Okay, one of the factors, there's your linear factor. Now the big thing is, when you look at this, we need to get the quadratic factor. Now, how do we do that? Well, firstly, it's pretty straightforward. If you take x cubed, now watch this, if you take x cubed and you divide by x, if you take x cubed and you divide by x here, you're going to get x squared, which I write there. Now check it. What is x times x squared? Gives you x cubed. So we've sorted out the first term in the second bracket. Now look at this. Also the last term, if you think of positive 12 and you divide by negative 2, you're going to get negative 6, which we can write as the last term in the quadratic factor. Now check it. What is negative 2 times negative 6? Is positive 12. So all you have to do is you take the first term, divide, you get your factor, your linear factor, then you take that x cubed, divide by x gives you x squared, and the last term, 12 divided by negative 2 gives me negative 6. And when you multiply, look at this, x times x squared gives you x cubed, and negative 2 times negative 6 is positive 12. So we've sorted out those two. Now the question is, what about this term here, the middle term? Well, it's easy. We don't know what it is, so let's call it a missing term in x, which gives you the quadratic one. But how do we get the m? Okay, the m, and this is actually very easy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do it the long way, and then I'm going to show you a shortcut for dealing with this. Now, if you take this bracket, these two brackets here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply them out. Now watch this, it's very, very clever, this. So remember, with when you get your solution and your factor, you write it there, there's your linear, then you say, okay, x times what gives me x cubed? Well, that's x squared, or x cubed divided by x is x squared. 12 divided by negative 2 is negative 6, and check it, negative 2 times negative 6 is positive 12. So you've got your first and last terms, but what about the middle two terms? So all I do is I write an m next to the x because I don't know what that is. Now when I multiply that, now watch this carefully, I'm going to do the normal method of mathematics here. Watch this. X cubed, which is the first term. Now do this here. Plus mx squared. Now watch that. Mx squared. And what's this term is going to be negative 6x. Great. Now do the same here. Negative 2x squared, but I'm going to write it over here. Negative 2x squared minus 2mx, okay, and negative 2 times negative 6 is positive 12, which is great because if you think about it carefully, we've got our x cubed, our 12. Now, we've got to establish, well look, we've got an mx squared here and a negative 2x squared here, but in the original, we only have one x squared term. Do you see that there? The 1x squared term is this guy, negative 1x squared. So what the idea is that when you add or subtract these guys here, when you take the mx squared and the minus 2x squared, you want these to give you negative 1x squared, which is really that second term. Which is the second term here. There it is. Minus 1x squared. You want that. And in fact, if you look at this carefully, it's actually quite simple. Because if you think about it, if you've got the mx squared, now watch this. If we add up these two, or we subtract them if you like, we need to get negative 1x squared. Alright, now how do we do it? Well, it's quite easy to see. What would m have to be? Well, if we just remove the x squareds, let's get rid of them. You've got m minus 2 is negative 1. So if you solve for m, you've got negative 1 plus 2 if you bring that across. So m is equal to 1. So that's 1. Now check it. What is 1 minus negative 2? Gives you that second term. What if you chose These guys, what if I said to you, what about these little guys here? If you chose these, how do they work out? Well, let's have a look at that. Negative 6x, okay, so we've got the negative 6x minus 2mx. And what must those be? It has to be, if you go right up to the cubic equation, it's got to be the negative 8x. That's the term in x. Have a look at that. So this must be negative 8x. Now get rid of the x's. Now look at this. You've got negative 2m. Negative 8 plus 6 is negative 2. So m is 1. Once again, it works. So what is the moral of this thing? Okay, so you get your solution and you get your factor here too. And then you write it here. Here's your linear factor. Then you've got a quadratic factor here. Okay, and what we do is we say x cubed over x is x squared. 12 over negative 2 is negative 6. Check it. That's x cubed and then plus 12. And then all you do is you multiply this expression with the m out and you link up the x squareds. And I'm only going to really worry about those because either the x squareds or the x's work. But I link up these. I've got mx squared minus 2x squared. And look at this. I must get that second term minus 1x squared, which is there over here. Okay, and once I do that, I can get 1. So what I now do is I can go back to my quadratic or my cubic equation, and I can say, well, look, x cubed minus x squared minus 8x plus 12 was 0. I got my little linear factor, and then I had x squared, and I had mx, and I had negative 6. Now, what is m? M is 1. Now watch this. X minus 2, x squared, plus the mx minus 6. And there you've got it. You've got your quadratic factor. Now if you multiply and check this out, it would work. Because look at this. If you times out, you're going to get x cubed, x squared, look at this, negative 6x. Let's go down, negative 2x squared, minus 2x and plus 12 if you do that. And look at this. Why does it work? Because that gives me x cubed. This is 1 minus 2 minus x squared minus 8x plus 12. So this, in fact, works. So there we've got it, our linear and our quadratic factor. As we do more examples, it's going to make more sense to you. So once we've got x minus 2, x squared plus x minus 6 is 0, all you need now do is factorize the quadratic. X plus 3, x minus 2. Look at that. There we go. And you have answers. You've got x is equal to 2, or x is minus 3, or a repeated answer. X is equal to 2 there, if you like. There are 3 answers, but one is repeated there.